Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 366.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we are going to talk about, well, honestly, one of my most favorite subjects. I will easily say that for the first 6 years of my real estate career, what we're going to talk about today is how I was able to continue to make business happen. There was really no other major strategy than what we're going to talk about today. In fact, what we're going to talk about today has the ability to lower your marketing costs. Dare I say all the way to zero if you're smart enough. What I'm also going to say is that if you are brave enough to go out there and do what we are going to talk about today, you will find yourself in a position that you will not be able to imagine sooner than you think. That's what I believe. And I'm like now, and I'm sure right around now you're wondering, what are we talking about? That's good because I have with me today none other than Stacy Brown Randall. Here's why this is important for you and me, because she's an expert. And I said expert especially, and I'm using it in the correct sense of the word, with helping you and I generate referrals. But more importantly than just referrals, because I know some of you tuned out when I said that. What would it be like for you if you could get a referral but didn't have to actually ask for it? Does that sound like some sort of nirvana? Does that sound like something that would make you excited? Because I know that some of you have that challenge, and I know that some of you have products and services that would, explode if you could just get in front of more customers and make that thing happen. Well, Stacy is here to make sure that that thing happens. So what does that mean? That means break out the notepads, the iPads, and any other pad that you might need to take some notes, because it's going to be time to pay attention to none other than Stacy Brown Randall. Stacy, you there?
I am here and ready.
And ready. That's good. Well, you think you're ready. You don't know yet.
That is actually very true. So let me just take it back.
Got it. Okay. So with this, what I like to do when I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here, this very same question I got to ask you the same one. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Wonder Woman, Black Widow, the Hulk, Spider-Man, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that occasionally we use our special skills and abilities and to serve other people, but sometimes we actually imagine ourselves, in capes and tights and really, really helping people in a single bound. Also, however, just like superheroes, entrepreneurs have a beginning. If you think about Spider-Man, for example, he was just a college kid, going to school, taking some photos, and then one day he gets bit by a spider, has to decide what to do with this new gift, and then we know him as Spider-Man. So my question to you is, before all of your online programs, before your coaching, before being a 3-time entrepreneur, and before even the kids, everything, what we want to know is, who is Stacy Brown Randall?
Well, thank you for asking that question. And I hope my answer doesn't disappoint you and your listeners, because when I kind of explain my background, I always tell folks it was pretty normal and pretty average. So, when I kind of go all the way back, right? One thing that I loved to do as a kid was theater. And I think that then eventually drove my drive to learn how to speak and present. And I went on thinking I would be the next Katie Couric. And I gave up that dream while I was in college. And, that typical lifestyle. I have an older brother. I've got 2 parents. They're still married. They love me. Now that I'm older, can do no wrong. Besides, I produce the grandchildren.
Right.
So, when I think back to it was this normal, wonderful childhood, lots of sports, lots of activities, always honing that skill. I didn't know it then, always honing that skill, the ability to teach and to present. And, went to college, graduated, had a couple of jobs. And then from that point forward, things got really, really interesting once I decided to kind of take that leap into becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to get to that in a moment. It's what we call the superhero moment. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But there's some things in that boring background that you say that I still want to talk about, because I heard some things that I think are similar for a lot of people, and that some people may now find themselves trying to learn, but and I think you learned them because it was a natural inclination. For example, and it's been my experience that one of the hard fought, won for skills, but is absolutely necessary, is the ability to speak, present, and teach. And you just talked about that, but it was more because you already had an interest in presenting yourself in that way. Was that something, are there other artists or in the family, or is that just, you just woke up and you couldn't help but put on a show?
So I'm always the loudest in my family. Yes. And definitely, I think about that. My brother's very quiet, and I'm more like my father. My father is an author, so reading and writing were big deals in our family. It was one I happened to pick up, not necessarily my brother. But so I think that, being surrounded by books and being surrounded by my father's books, and he did a lot of historical fictions. And so there were always stacks of books everywhere. So just that love of reading, was really kind of instilled in me early on. We could always stay up later if we were reading. If not, we had to go to bed.
Nice.
And there was no television during the week. We didn't have TVs in our bedrooms until we were in high school. So there's some things that my parents did, I think, that kind of set this baseline of loving to read, and then really noticing I had a gift for writing and really focusing on writing. Can't say the same for me about math, but focusing on writing. And then the fact that I do believe it's one of those things that God gave me is just this natural ability to want to present and to want to teach other people. And I think once I got my master's degree, I actually even became an adjunct professor for a couple of years and really enjoyed that. So I think it's just one of those things where we all have talents. That just happened to be something that I had and I developed, and then been definitely able to use it.
Yeah, I get that a bunch, but I just realized something. Now we're helping people with their parenting, because you just said if our kids want to stay up late, all I got to do is say, sure, just read a book. They're going to go to bed. It's awesome.
Well, it's funny because my kids, I have 3, 6, 8, and 9, and my kids stay up to read. Like, we have instilled that in them, and it's a big deal to stay up to read. So you can get your kids to go to sleep, and you can also get them to love reading. Either way, you're getting the win.
Right. I'm like, super ninja secret right there. I'm going to try that one tonight. I mean, I'm just saying, So now, this is what I find interesting, though, is that the skill set of speaking, presenting, and teaching typically doesn't present itself as, at least I haven't seen a whole lot of environments that go, okay, you're a good speaker and presenter, you should become an entrepreneur. A lot of people end up going, they may have this skill set, but haven't found a way to use it and utilize it to turn it into a business. But before we get to that, I have a question, because I got to know, you mentioned you played sports. Were they team sports or individual?
Team sports.
Like basketball or?
No, I got cut from the JV basketball team. My sports growing up were soccer and softball. And then I also, in high school, when I got to high school, I also ran track and cross country, which were more individual sports. And I was also a cheerleader.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Because I think that has a lot to do with these things that we do in our formative years, if you will, have a lot to do with what we choose later in life. And it's often a place where we can begin to discover those skills and abilities. So I'm really curious, when we were on the sports teams, did you ever become like the captain?
You just want to know all my secrets, don't you?
Hey, that's my job. Everybody's trying to build cash flow and figuring it out. And that's, so I've got to dig to go, okay, what makes Stacy tick so that they can know, hey, I'm like Stacy, I can do this.
Right. So this is, I do hope some of your listeners can actually relate to what I'm about to say. So yes, I think I would say I probably peaked more in college than I did in high school with a lot of my leadership skills. What I learned in high school was more so when trying to, being the captain of the JV cheerleading squad and, being in some of those leadership roles with some of the sports that I was on. What I actually learned was I'm really bossy and people don't like that. So particularly girls.
Yeah.
So what I actually learned is that I have a lot of work to do on my leadership skills. And I think that truly has informed, who I am today and how I approach my work and the boards and committees that I serve on. But so definitely, I think that I am competitive by nature. I definitely get that from my mother. But when I think about like what the typical things you get out of sports, like that teamwork and competitive spirit and drive, like what I was learning was, yes, all those things. And you have got to learn to be a better leader because nobody wants to be your friend when you're so bossy.
Yeah, well, this is a great topic, I think, because I'm going to assume that there's a number of people, either by a gender bias or just because they don't want to be perceived as bossy, etc. Maybe they're holding themselves back. So how did you find the balance between staying, quote unquote, true to yourself, if you will, but and being that leader without necessarily having to be alone on the weekends?
So there was one key moment that actually happened to me when I was a 10th grader in high school. And I can tell this story with exact clarity because it's followed me forever.
Wow.
And I was elected to be the captain of the JV cheerleading squad. And cheerleading, we would cheer, obviously for fall and spring, for football and basketball. So by the time we got through our football season and we were starting our second season and going to be, cheering for the for the basketball team, the team took a vote and they impeached me.
Nice.
And I was no longer the captain. The nicest girl on the team was now the captain of the JV cheerleading squad. And to be honest, I don't think that had ever happened. But if it was going to happen, it was totally going to happen to me. And I remember a clear moment when one of the girls who on the team with me that I definitely had some issues with came up to me afterwards. And she said, "You know what, Stacy, I learned a lot from you today." And I was like, sometimes I just thought she wanted to beat me up. So I was like, "Oh, okay." And she was like, "When we voted to put somebody else as the captain," she's like, "we really expected like some type of temper tantrum or some type of show." She was like, "And you were really calm and you just moved on with practice and we just got on and it made it easy for all of us just to kind of move on." And I don't remember thinking to do that, like, "Oh, let's be calm. Let's just move on with practice. Let's make this easy on everybody." I think I don't know where it came from. It just came from me. But her feedback to me to tell me, like, "We really respect that. We really appreciate that." That was such an important moment for me to remember, what it looks like when you're trying to be a leader and when you're trying to actually get things accomplished. And that moment of, wow, my reaction to this, right, kept this team intact and we kept moving forward. I just think that was a very poignant moment for me in my life.
Indeed. And this was in high school?
It was. I was a 10th grader.
Yeah, this is a different high school than the one I remember, but okay. Okay. And I'm willing to bet that some people would even say that there are some people in other high positions right now that could take a lesson from being able to receive feedback as well as you did that young. So that's amazing to me right there.
Yeah, it was a good lesson to learn. I don't know how you teach that, to be perfectly honest, but it was a good lesson to learn.
Okay, so now let's jump forward a little bit because you mentioned that there were a couple of jobs that you had. So were those jobs related to anything that you did in school or college, or did you just do the Pizza Hut thing?
So not the Pizza Hut thing, though I do come from a family of restaurant entrepreneurs. So I know better than to go work at or run a restaurant. Actually, the interesting thing about my life is I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs in my family. I was telling this to somebody the other day, I am the daughter, granddaughter, sister, niece, and wife of restaurant owners.
Wow.
So yes, crazy. But, those jobs that I
eat well.
Right. Well, you know what that means is I never learned to cook. My poor husband.
Right.
Yes, I'm trying to learn that now, and I don't know why people enjoy it. It's just stressful for me trying to get everything timed out right.
She's like, can't we hire somebody for this? Yeah, right. I totally understand.
Isn't there these things called restaurants? We can get some takeout.
Exactly. DoorDash, Uber. Somebody bring me some food. Yeah.
Yes, bring me some of my food. So, but the jobs that I had when I graduated from college, from undergrad, and because it would be a number of years before I would go back and get my master's degree. But when I graduated from college, I graduated with offers to become like the weekend weather person and weekday reporter at a couple of stations in the town where my college is. I went to the University of South Carolina. So that's in Columbia, South Carolina. They have an incredible journalism program, particularly a broadcast journalism program. And so I came out and I was like, no. And my parents were like, what? You've spent all this time saying you wanted to be on television and now you've got offers and you're saying no. And so I had gotten into a little bit into nonprofit world while I was in doing some different fundraisings and things when I was in college. And I was like, well, I at least have that background. I don't want to do that forever, but I have that background so I can at least go find a job. And that's what brought me to Charlotte. And I worked for a lobbying firm, and then I worked for the Chamber of Commerce, and I had a few other positions within that time. But what I really honed was a background in sales and marketing, and then a background in workforce development and HR. And that's really what those jobs kind of conditioned me to do.
Interesting. I didn't see that turn coming at all, by the way.
Well, and I'm also the type of person who I can bore easily. So even when I was working a full-time job, I was a realtor on the side.
Got it. Now this is making sense. Yes, that's the characteristic I think many entrepreneurs have. It's like, okay, I figured it out. What's the next challenge? And because this is not challenging me anymore. I totally understand that. Totally understand it. Now, a lot of people listening, when they're on their journey to build their cash flow, they reach this point to where they've done their job. They're like, I'm really they're looking for more of something, more time, more money, more freedom, more choice, more something. And what happens is they go, you know what? I think I want to do a business. That's what I want to do. If I do a business, that will help me to get to where I want to go. However, they've gotten used to operating as an employee. They've gotten used to operating in a job, and it requires a special sense of courage in order to escape the gravitational pull of the whole job thing. Now, my question to you is twofold. In order to do that, you have to first discover that superhuman, that superhero ability, if you will. You've got to discover what that is. One, I want to know how you found out what your superhero ability was, and then how did you develop the courage to go, you know what? I'm going to build a business around this.
So I would say that, when you think about that ability, I always had the opportunity, or not, I should probably say it this way. I always had the ability to kind of look for the next opportunity. That was a little bit of my MO. And not necessarily because I could, well, yes, because I could bore easily, but if you could challenge me, you probably could get me to stick. But at the same time, what I learned through all my jobs is that I actually don't make a great employee. I don't.
Yes, you do.
Right? So I don't play politics well. I just don't. I can't stand favoritism. I think it's just the bane of all corporate America existence. And I am a competitive person. So if you're not going to reward me based on what I've been able to accomplish, and you're going to reward me based on like what everybody else gets, rewarded on, which is like average, like that's going to insult me. Right. So when you kind of combine those things, and I come from a family where being an entrepreneur is not new. It's not, to be honest, being an entrepreneur isn't scary in my family. Now, what is scary is when you go do a job or build a company that they don't understand, because they understand restaurants and they understand hospitality and tourism, and everything else are like, wait, I don't get it. Right.
Right.
So, but I had always had that support. And I sat around every Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're talking about our businesses, not the people we work for.
Nice.
And so, when you think about that, I knew that taking that leap was something I wanted to do. And that ability to just be like, you know what, I actually do have people in my life that'll catch me. And so I'm going to try to fly. And just making that leap and knowing that I was willing to work hard. It wasn't really going great in any job I ever had, even though I was promoted and moved along. I didn't want any more of that.
Right.
And I wanted the freedom. I wanted all those freedoms that you want. But for me, I wanted the freedom to control what happened to me, because sometimes I didn't like who a company turned me into. And a lot of times I wasn't what they needed, because I'm not this great employee. So for me, it was really that ability to say, this isn't crazy, because people who do it, and you just got to learn to fly, and I read this great quote recently. It was like, this guy said, I don't know who said it. It was in a magazine I read, but this guy said, sometimes you just got to jump and grow wings on the way down. And so that's what I did. I just jumped and figured I'll figure it out, and I'll learn to fly on the way down. Now, I'll tell you this. I made the decision to leave my safe corporate job and take this leap. And I actually, the very first thing I did was I joined a small company as an equal third partner and started a new division. But I did that being 4 weeks pregnant and not knowing it.
Okay.
And that's really not a way, if I give any advice to your listeners, not a way to start a business. I'm just saying.
Wow.
I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying it makes things more complicated.
Yeah, a little bit. Morning sickness and 12-hour days probably don't mix.
No, they don't. They don't.
Not too well. Okay. So what was that initial business?
So it was a research firm. And yes. And so my area of expertise back then, I was on the human capital HR side, was generational diversity and employee engagement. So we were a research firm that would go into companies like BDO, which is a large accounting firm in the United States, and we would do like a generational study on their employees and help them figure out how they can keep their employees from different generations. And I had been interested in it, and then I kind of created a job from it. And then this research firm said, "Come join us. Let's do this together, and you can be our lead generational consultant." I didn't know what that meant. I was like, "What does it mean to be a consultant?" I had to figure it out. And so that's what I did. And I did that for about a year. And my largest client said, "You're really good at this. You should have your own company, and we'll be your first client."
Nice.
Completely not the way it's supposed to start.
No.
And it definitely, got me thinking, wow, this business thing is way easier than I ever thought about.
Okay, so this is good because there's two types of people that are listening right now. There's the person who's listening to you going, they're upset because they're like, that didn't happen for me. That's not fair. And then there's the person who's going, wow, that's amazing. Maybe that can happen for me too. But my question is, oftentimes things that come easy at the beginning let us down later. So
yes.
There's got to be more to this story.
Oh, please, you have to ask how it ended.
Yes, I do. That's all.
Because that is the part to tell, right? Like everything I just told you was the roses. Now let's get to the thorns,
yeah,
right?
What really happened?
Right. So, they came along as my first client. It was incredible. This was at the end of 2008. So my business did amazingly well during the recession. Nice. But what I did was what a lot of entrepreneurs do, particularly when it's just you and you're starting out, or if it's just you forever. We put our head down and we do the work. And until the work dries up, we forget to look up for more business.
Yeah.
And so for 2 years, I just puttered along with this great, almost 6-figure every year contract with this client. And it was wonderful. And I spent some time.
Hold on. There was only one client?
Yes. Yeah. One.
Okay.
Right. Fair. I get it. Not fair. Don't worry. It gets bad. Let me get there. Let me get to that part. Right. So this one client, it was fantastic. I didn't bring on new clients. I spent time writing articles and doing research and getting interviewed by Bloomberg News. And I thought I was like, woo, this is fantastic. Wow. Until that one client with their huge contract wasn't a client anymore. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh boy, because I cannot go back to work. So then I started having to hustle. Then I was like, I got to go find clients. And remember, I do have a background in sales and marketing. So sales isn't my issue, but I had to get out there and figure out a way to build sales and do it in a way that worked for me. Mm-hmm. And there's just some things that don't work for me. And I believe they don't work for most people. But so I was like, oh my gosh, I got to bring in clients. And so I started bringing on clients, but my business was becoming much more commoditized and the generational interest cycles. And so I was hitting a downward cycle and people wanting to talk about the generations. It's an up cycle now. It's been in a down cycle. And at the same time, I was also being commoditized because what I could do, other companies could do as well. And it was surveys. So everybody thought I just do that on SurveyMonkey for free, right? So wasn't ahead of any of these issues. And I should have been. I'm smart enough to be. And after 2 years of that business, it just crashed and burned. And it failed. And it was painful. It was painful financially. It was painful mentally and emotionally. I let that thing die. I should have cut it off way before, but I just couldn't let go because at the end of the day, the worst thing was the hit my ego took.
Yes. Now we're getting real. Because one of the things that I know a lot of people are afraid of right now, Stacey, they're not starting because they don't want to feel any of the things that you just mentioned because they think that's the end of life or something. So now that you're on the other side of those things, what would you say to that person who's like they're still sitting in the bleachers because they don't even want to get on the field because they're afraid it's going to hurt? Here's the deal. When it comes to generating more business, you got to have a plan. And, well, some plan is better than no plan. And I know at the time right now, it might be like, wow, Jay, I don't want to try too much more. Another plan, another way. Yeah, well, I get it. Here's the deal. Do something. Because the reason you're listening is to look for those tips, the tools, the techniques, the things that you can go out there and to build your cash flow. That's why we bring them to you. Well, here's another strategy. And the cool thing about this one is that it fits for everybody because all it costs is time. Let's get back to it.
So the number one thing is have a plan, right? Like have a plan that it could fail. And I know all the positive psychology out there tells you think positive and it will happen, right? I mean, literally just taught that example to my children about, they were all like, we're going to lose our basketball game. I'm like, of course you are. You're saying you're going to lose. And I taught them about positive psychology. So I get that, right? But at the end of the day, have a plan like it's going to fail. And figure out what will be worst case scenario if that happens. And then figure out, can you live with worst case scenario? And most of us can. And I'll tell you, if you know that there's a chance you could fail, you'll work a lot harder to not end up there. And so when I failed, and I did it in all the wrong ways, right? I had to go get a job. It was the longest 15 months of my life. I mean, it was one of those things where I would drive to work, walk across the lobby back in my suit. I had to hang up my jeans, right? Walk across the lobby back in my suit and be like, how did I get here this morning? Like I wouldn't even remember the commute to work. Great company, not right for me. And when I left to go back out on my own again to build the business I have today, I took the nameplate with me off the door that said Stacy Randall, Chief Talent Officer. I took that nameplate and it sits above my door in my office. And I have to look at it every day and be like, yeah, nope, not going back there. And it is what really pushes me. So I would tell folks who are like, should I do it? Should I do it? Have a plan. Know what you want to do. Don't quit your job without having savings and without understanding what you think you want to do. No, you're probably going to change over the course of your business's first year, but have a plan, right? And then have the thing that motivates you when you have to tell yourself, well, this is really hard. I happen to have a nameplate I look at, right? But it could be anything. So it's have the visual of where you don't want to have to go back to, but also don't jump until you have some sort of plan. Knowing plans will change, right? But have some plan.
Yep. Totally understood. Now, when you're digging yourself out, I'm assuming through that job, and you're in that position. One, kudos for going, you know what? That's just what I got to do. I know that was probably time you like to, not think about a lot, but to get yourself back out again, I'm assuming, developed different skill sets necessary specifically as it relates to referrals. So help us understand, how that process works, and more importantly, how that process could work for someone else who's listening and wanting to grow their business as well.
Right. Absolutely. So what happened to me is when I had to take that job, I was always looking for plan B. Like if I knew if God was going to allow me to go back out on my own, I was not going to mess up a second time. And that was really important to me. So I was always looking for opportunities. When I unpacked what went wrong in my first business, and let me be really honest with your listeners, I didn't talk about my business failure until 2 years later. I was well into the company I have now. I was well into this company before I actually started telling people, that first business I had, I didn't get some great job opportunity I had to take with the spin, that I gave it. I was like, I had to get a job. because that business failed. So, this wasn't like I failed and I picked myself up and said, okay, let's talk about it. Like there was there was some grief process I had to go through. So I don't want to paint roses that aren't actually there. And the other thing is when I unpacked my first business, I realized that business development isn't my problem. I know how to talk about what I'm passionate about, and I know how to get other people to see from that perspective how they can have what I have, or use what it is that I'm selling, right? So, but what I realized is that I didn't have a systematic way to touch business development every day in a way that honors me. And what I realized is I'm good at reforming relationships and building a network. And so referrals should be perfect for me. But when I looked back at my first business, I didn't receive one.
Ooh.
So when I was thinking about starting a second business while working at that job, I became certified as a productivity coach, and I knew that was my plan B. So when I started my coaching practice, I started out as a productivity coach, and I took everything I had learned and thought would be possible with my referral strategy and just tested it on myself. I was my first guinea pig.
Mm-hmm.
And in my first year as a productivity coach, I generated over 100 referrals. And I didn't ask for any of them. And that was what I realized was different about me and every other person out there talking about referrals, right? Because they're saying, here's how you ask. And if you can't ask, it's your problem. No, that's completely false. So I figured out how to ask, I figured out how to generate referrals without having to ask for them. And then my client said, okay, wait. We love that you're helping us run our businesses better, and you've morphed more from a productivity coach to a business coach. But why is it so hard to get on your calendar? Like, why can't I get the spot that I want when I want it? And you're forcing me into like first and third Tuesdays at 3. And I was like, well, when supply, when you've got a lot of supply and demand, it's like I kind of taught the whole process there. It's that the idea here is that demand for me is going up, supply is dropping, and it's all because I'm getting these referrals. And then my client said, because most of them are business owners, and they are in what I call relationship building sales. So I've got to build a relationship with you before you're going to decide to buy me. So not buying a book from Amazon, but deciding to buy my house with you, right? Or deciding to let you invest my money as my financial advisor, or to do my taxes, or whatever it is. I realized that they said, teach me your referral strategy. And I realized that what I had actually created a strategy. And then I started duplicating it for them and teaching it to them. And then they started having success, and in some cases, better success than me.
Yeah.
And it's not about the volume, right? I mean, some definitely have better volume, but it's about the types of clients that they would be bringing in and how much time that they saved and how much money that they saved. And then I realized I'm onto something here, and I can help more people if I can do this in a way that's not just the face-to-face, one-on-one type coaching. And that's when I decided to launch my online program, which is my Growth by Referrals online program, to help as many people as possible. And what makes me different is I will show you a way to generate referrals, and you're not going to ask through the process. And if you want to ask, and I get this a lot, people are like, well, I'm not against asking. I'm like, then I can't help you. Because I think that goes against actually the way that we're wired as humans to actually want to help somebody else. And we want to help. We don't necessarily want to be told we have to help.
Interesting.
And that's what asking does.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, why is asking so, we'll quote in air quotes here, bad?
So here's the thing. So when you think about someone asking you, right, for a referral or to help, like when they ask for help, that's different. When they're asked, because usually when someone says, I need help, you probably say, and I'm assuming, Jay, you'd be like, yeah, how can I help you? What do you need? Right? But that's referral is typically positioned. It's positioned as, hey, who do you know who should be doing business with me? Or I saw on LinkedIn that you know Tom, and I really would like to meet Tom, right? What it does is it violates at the very core of actually who's the hero of the referral process. When I ask, I make it about me. But generating a referral has nothing to do with me. Generating a referral, the hero in the story is actually the person, the referral source, who's going to make the introduction to me, right? It's not even the client, the potential client that has the pain, that has the problem that I can solve, right? It's the referral source and them deciding to make the connection between the person with the problem, the prospective client, and you, right? The person receiving the referral, the person who has the solution. And so when we ask, we violate, right, their need to want to help us because we're asking for it. We commoditize the relationship. And because referrals are built on trust, you can't violate that and you can't commoditize that.
this is interesting because what you're referring to is very core to everything that that I do practice, teach. All of our students are out there obtaining referrals all the time. I guess my question then, because, by default, being in the real estate world, we're in a high trust and high dollar world, which means relationship is key. I'm curious to understand, what do you think the difference? Is there a difference between, say, someone who's out there, asking versus someone who's not asking? Is there a higher client satisfaction on one side? Are their clients contributing more money? What is the effect? Let's pretend both of them are getting the same number of referrals, or is that even possible? Are you saying that you get more referrals by not asking? I'm just trying to unpack this thing to understand.
Yes, it's a great question. So here's the thing. We don't ask, but that doesn't mean we do nothing. So
okay,
right?
That's good.
All right, let's put this out there in context, right? So it's not like this is the philosophy I tell everybody. And I think this is the philosophy you have to know about before you can decide, all right, I think I'm on board with what Stacy's talking about, because every expert talks about their philosophy, and you have to understand that, because that is how you're a better consumer of their message, their marketing, their materials, whatever, right? So my philosophy is referrals come from relationships. Relationships come from connections, and connections are maintained through ongoing touch points. And when I say touch points, don't you dare think I'm talking about an email newsletter you send out every month and say, whoop,
I'll stop
done.
That.
Right? No, you can do it. You just do it to generate sales. You don't do it to generate referrals, because referrals is not a part of your sales strategy. It is a part of your sales strategy in terms of it's how you generate clients, but the tactics you use in sales are different than the ones you use on referrals. So when you ask the question, okay, so if I'm not asking, like, what's happening, right? Why is that? How is that going to happen? We do want to stay in touch and stay in front of the people who refer us, or the people who should be referring us, and build a relationship with them. And I don't mean go grab beers every Friday night, because nobody has time for that. I mean, generally take an interest in their world and try to connect with them. And I've got a great superhero story for that if we have time. But it's just connecting with them in a way that makes them think, well, Stacy cares about me. Jay cares about me. We're not trying to build 100 referral sources, right? But a dozen to 2 dozen is where most of my folks fall. And if you're generating a couple of referrals from all those folks, you're probably getting what you need. Not everybody will get to 100% referrals. Not every industry is built that way. But for some folks, if I could get them to 30 or 50%, they'd be like, that would be amazing. Right. And so it is about how we build relationships with people, but we have to group these people together so that we can, in some levels, systematize it so that we don't forget to do something. So when I say don't ask, I just mean that we don't come out with our hands like we're begging for help, right? We're literally making sure that they know we're investing in them. And then when an opportunity comes along, they will refer it to us. And once they've referred once and we think properly and keep that relationship going, they'll always refer back.
Interesting. Okay. I'm obviously, you're the first person that I've heard say anything like this, and I'm sure that's true for everyone listening today. So how did you develop, we'll call it the intuition, the understanding, because this is very nuanced. I mean, everybody, we know we should be getting referrals. That's not necessarily new. This not having to ask part seems like I feel like there was a story or an understanding that happened one day. Like, I don't know, I'm sure the skies parted and the sun shined. I don't know. I just feel like there's something there. It's like, how did you come about that distinction? I mean, there's just something to that.
So I started, and you know what, to be honest, I don't think there was the skies parted. That would be an awesome story for me to tell. I think that for me, I just started figuring out, when I was receiving referrals, what had I done just before that to make that happen? And had I done anything, right? So sometimes I would receive referrals and I would realize, 3 months ago, I made a connection for them that I knew that they needed, and they just remembered me favorably, right? So I started looking back to figure out, why am I generating referrals? But here's the other thing. I do really good work. And I have a really good client experience.
That helps.
It does, because here's the thing. Nobody refers crappy work.
Right.
And I specifically like to help people in what I would call dime a dozen professions, dime a dozen industries where there's like a gazillion of you, realtors, financial advisors, attorneys, bankers, right? I prefer to work with people in those industries because I think it's so easy for them to stand out. And I'm not teaching them marketing stuff. Right. I'm teaching them referral stuff. And that I think is so easy to stand out because I really help folks create, okay, you got to have this great client experience to give me a reason to want to talk about you or to know you do great work so that I'm comfortable referring you, right? To create that buzz and that wow factor.
Right.
That's really, really important. And I think that coupled with the fact that I just stayed in touch with the people who could be referring me. And then I did it in a system so that I could keep up with it and it didn't overwhelm me. That's when all the pieces just fell into place. And I looked up and I was like, wait, I have figured out how to wash, rinse, and repeat this too. And that's when I said, okay, now my clients are able to wash, rinse, and repeat. I really think that when you look at the success I've had and all my clients have had and they continue to have, that's when I was like, you know what? More people need this message. Because to your point, Jay, I am a contrarian. I go against everything out there in the advice about generating referrals. And I think this is the good news message, right? That people need to hear, because if you think you have to ask to generate referrals, you're just not going to do it. So you've made a decision that you're not going to get referrals. And this is what I'm trying to teach people is, no, that's not true. If you do good work, you are worthy of referrals. You just got to know the system, the plan to stay on top of it and in front of it.
Love it. Love it a lot. In fact, here's what I know. I know that there's a number of people listening right now who also love exactly what you are saying. They are picking up what you're putting down and they probably want more of it. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down? Tell us how to stalk you online so that we can get more of you.
Yes, please stalk me in a very professional way.
Yes, that's what we meant.
That would be awesome. So, of course, you can find my website. It's growthbyreferrals.com. I have Stacy Brown Randall has a Facebook page as well, a business Facebook page. You can always hang out with me there too. I've got a group called Referrals Without Asking. If you ask to be invited to that group on Facebook, I'm happy to include you. And then what I'd love to do is I want to take what we've been talking about and give your listeners just a little bit more information so they can dive into some of the pieces we're talking about. So I have a free report. It's called The 7 Deadly Sins of Generating Referrals. It's the no-nos, the thing not to do. And one of them we talked about was asking, right? That's a no-no.
I'm sure it's going to read like a checklist for me, but go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. Right. But there's 6 other things, 6 other no-nos, right, that you shouldn't be doing. And I would let me make it easy for your listeners and just put it on the website, growthbyreferrals.com/cashflow diary. If they go to that link, it'll be right there for them. They can grab it, read those, the 7 deadly sins, get some more information, put some context around what we've been talking about. Of course, I've got a blog, YouTube channel, all those things. They can learn more about me as well. And so, they can just kind of figure out what I'm all about. And then I would love for them, if they're interested, to, comment and start a conversation with me.
Indeed. So as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you, which I think is going to be an interesting answer, given everything else.
You just totally set me up.
Well, I'm guessing. I'm just,
okay.
I'm taking the information and I'm just like, this is going to be good. So, let's pretend for a moment that someone listening is, they're in front of the superhero outfit store, Stacy. They think, I'm going to go be this entrepreneur. That's what's going to happen for me. I'm going to get my tights, my cape. I know what I'm going to do. People are going to love me. However, as you know, in the back of their mind, they still have this voice. It's that voice that comes up when we think we're going to go do something great. It's the voice that comes and reminds us of what we're not and how we haven't and who are we to think we could. And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this person is actually going to follow through and do exactly what you said, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you tell them to do?
So they're going to do what we just spent time talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is what would I tell them to do?
Yeah, they're going to get their business. They think they want to get their business started. They're ready to go. What do they need to do?
So, I would say that the first thing, I would say 2 things, but the first thing I would say is when those doubts creep in, and whether it's your voice or someone else's voice, you have to learn to play the shut up game. because those voices are going to be there, and they're going to be people you love, and they're going to be inside your own head. And I teach my clients this all the time, right? You got to learn to play the shut up game and tell those voices to shut up. The other thing that I would say, if you're going to take what I say and go and do it and make it happen, is make the decision. At the end of the day, what I did with my referral program, and now it's the fact of, what I sell online and to my clients, it started out because years ago, I made the decision to take control of not having another failure. And so I had to do it differently. I had to build a business differently, and referrals became my lifeline. And that's the lifeline I want to give to others. So if someone were standing there in front of that superhero store, and I hope if they're a woman, they're grabbing Wonder Woman because she's my favorite. But if not, whatever, right? That they would be willing to play the shut up game to protect their mindset of why they're doing what they're about to do. And at the same time, that they have made the decision that this isn't just starting a company. This is starting a new way to control your world. And it's an amazing ride that I wouldn't trade for anything. But those rides have ups and downs, and just be prepared for them. And as someone once said, never go too high in your highs and never too low in your lows when you're starting a business.
Indeed. I love it. I love the energy. I love the passion and the connect and just the contrarian view. I mean, as an entrepreneur and a guy who's a horrible employee too. Well, I get it. It's just amazing what we can do today and what can be created from what others might determine to be a failure. We can turn around, and we have the capacity to make something successful from it. And I definitely appreciate the knowledge, insight, and wisdom that you shared with us here today, Stacey.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means growthbyreferrals.com/cashflow diary. When? Now. Why? Because you know you need it. You said to yourself while you were listening, ooh, I should do that, but let me finish this first. No. Stop. Do it now. Why? Because you know, like I know, how many times you've made that decision and not followed through. I'm telling you to go right now, because one more referral, you are one conversation away from being able to make that business into the things that you want it to be. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.